The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is Marcy Reedy, Project Manager for the University Council for Educational Administration, with the UCEA webinar series on educational leadership. Today's discussion is part of UCEA's celebration of October as National Principals Month. We wanted to take this opportunity to hear from practicing principals about how their preparation experience impacted their leadership. How has their preparation supported them in the role of principal, and how has their training translated to success on the job? So before we go any further, just a few quick logistical details. As you notice, there is a question or comment box located on the webinar platform. We will be monitoring that throughout the webinar, so please, we strongly encourage you to list any questions you have for the participant. And with that announcement, I would like to introduce our three outstanding school leaders who are joining us today from award-winning preparation programs. Let me first introduce Kaeleen Barnett. Kaeleen is the graduate assistant and current PhD student in the Educational Leadership and Policy Studies Department in the Morgridge College of Education at the University of Denver. Before pursuing these personal educational aspirations, Kaeleen was a founding member and principal at Colorado High School Charter. Kaeleen's passion as a principal, and her passion now as she's joined academia, is to promote educational equity by providing a supportive environment for students who have struggled personally or academically in a conventional high school setting. Kaeleen's current research focuses on the physical and emotional reconstruction and reorientation of community school systems, both ideologically and psychologically. Effective leadership practices in schools and districts, and policy standards for principal preparation. That's quite a load, Kaeleen. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Next, I would like to introduce Regina Connerly. Regina is the principal at Lakeland Elementary School in Washington. She began her teaching career in the Federal Way School District at Kylo Middle School, where she was a special education teacher for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Following that position, she transitioned to become the Dean of Students at Valhalla Elementary School, during which time she gained an appreciation for the important and impactful role of principal, which we can all appreciate. This motivated her to earn her administrative credentials and master's in education through the Danforth Educational Program at the University of Washington. Her program leadership has described Regina as a learning-focused, equity-driven leader who leads with courage and heart. We appreciate your time, Regina.
It's my honor. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Finally, joining us is Allison Tingwall. Allison is in her 3rd year as the principal of Curie Metropolitan High School. Curie Metro is the 3rd largest school in the Chicago public school system, with over 2,900 students and over 270 staff members. In her first 2 years as principal, Allison developed a robust instructional leadership team to drive collaborative professional learning and position students for success early on. She also strengthened the school's learning environment by reducing high-level student behavior infractions and securing almost $30 million in necessary capital and facility improvements. Allison expects to complete her EDD in Urban Educational Leadership at the University of Illinois Chicago in November of this year, just next month. She also serves as an adjunct lecturer in curriculum, instruction, and assessment at UIC. Thanks so much for joining us, Allison. I don't know how you even found the time.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And that's one of the things we learn to do, right, is balance a lot of demands.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of UCEA, a very, very warm welcome to each of you. Thanks for joining us. So to get the discussion started off, I'd like to open the floor and give each of our experts an opportunity to share reflections about your preparation experiences broadly. We were thinking that the audience would be interested in learning some of the key areas from your preparation that really stand out to you as strongly supporting your leadership. In particular, if you could offer an example of a time when you confronted a challenging situation in your school where you directly called upon elements of your training. And additionally, if there were any gaps in your training or things that you wish you had been told before leading a school that you weren't told to start. Kaeleen, would you be able to get us started off?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Marcy. As you mentioned, I am a proud graduate of the University of Denver's Principal Preparation Program. When I applied to the program, I was working as a school counselor at Colorado High School Charter. We were a turnaround school in jeopardy of closing the next academic year if we did not make major gains in student achievement. I have to admit, it was a scary and unsettling position to be in. At the time, I don't think I truly conceptualized what it meant for our community, for our students, or the educators working tirelessly to keep our doors open. All I knew is I wanted to do something to help. I went to our leadership team and told them I wanted to be a part of this change and I was going to apply to DU's educational leadership program. And to do this, I needed the support of our principal to agree to be my principal mentor throughout the program. To my surprise and delight, he agreed. Given there was so much going on, I was surprised he was so willing to take the time to mentor me through my own leadership journey. I never would have imagined that that decision would change the course of my career so drastically, and that my work in the program would immediately impact my school, our students, and our community. Even before my courses started, our preparatory assignments that DU gave us, like drafting and distributing a school climate survey, initiated conversations with my leadership team that they had either never engaged in, or due to the substantial amount of work that lay before all of us, it was believed there was just no time to have these kind of conversations. Over the course of my first quarter in the program, DU had us conduct an organizational diagnosis of my school. I was tasked to dig deeply into our school's performance data, our systems, our culture, our marketing plan, our connection to community, our board structures. I looked at our policies, our procedures. As I analyzed this data, I was guided and supported by the DU faculty. And then I was able to share my findings with my peers in the program to solicit immediate feedback based on their experience, their positions within their schools, and the structures of their school. Finally, I was able to take this report to my school's leadership team and make recommendations. I was able to engage in a really meaningful dialogue about change and how to best implement or revamp our existing programs. Ultimately, I'm proud to say that this work and the shift in culture and focus, in part, led to my school moving out of turnaround status and, even better, becoming the highest rated charter school on Colorado's school performance framework. Even more exciting for me personally is this work in my program allowed me to gain the skills necessary to then go on and open a replication school in a different community in Denver as the school's founding principal. All that said, I still have a tremendous amount to learn. So the last part of your question, were there gaps in my training and things I wish I would have been told before leading a school? Absolutely, there are a ton. being a school principal is one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. I wish I knew more about school finance, about budgets, about how to uncover additional sources of funding. But that said, my prep program was pretty incredible in teaching me about a ton of different aspects of school leadership in a year's time. Nothing will really replace the knowledge that comes with doing the work over time, I believe, though.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And it's wonderful to hear such a success story. Thank you for sharing that, Kaeleen. And it sounds like that it took the mentor principal and program support and all of your hard work to pull that all together from a lot of
Absolutely.
different sources.
It was a community effort.
Yeah, great. So, well, let's keep the discussion rolling and bring in another example. Regina, do you have any thoughts that you would like to add about your preparation and areas that stood out?
Yes, thank you, Kaeleen, for sharing. It sounds like your story and mine are very similar in many things, being able to analyze that data and come up with the next step about how to ensure that you are doing everything in order to make sure that scholars are being successful academically and socially, emotionally. So I can say ditto to that there with what you were talking about, Kaeleen. In order to add on to that, one thing that I think really stood out for me at the University of Washington through the Danforth program was their laser-like focus on preparing leaders to be instructional leaders and not just managers of a building. And so in regards to that, the program really prepared the soon-to-be principals with what does quality instruction look like and sound like, and how can you ensure that the teachers that are really at that ground level, that in the classroom on a day-to-day basis, really unpacking the curriculum, really backwards planning to understand what the students need to be able to do and what that's going to look like and sound like to put that into reality. And so with that, one thing that really stood out for me within my program is being able to provide teachers that work extremely hard, put in a lot of time and energy into their craft, be able to provide teachers with that targeted feedback around their instructional practice. And so through my program, I was able to strengthen my skills on being able to go into a classroom and observe a lesson, being able to look at the items and artifacts around the classroom in relationship to what the school district has provided as far as instructional materials and curriculum guides to see are, the standards being taught and how are they being taught with fidelity in order for scholars to be successful. And with that, being able to provide teachers with that targeted feedback and really that bite-sized feedback, because I know all of us have received feedback within our careers, and a lot of times we receive a lot of it, and sometimes that can be very overwhelming when you just have tons of different ways that you can go about improving your practice. And so one thing that I've learned and try to be very diligent about is providing my teachers with just a bite-sized piece of feedback that they're on the verge of. So not a far from skill, but something that they're really on the verge from. So after having a conversation with the teacher, that they can go right into their classroom and improve their practice. And so that is something that I have learned and refined through Danforth and continue to do inside of my practice now that I'm a principal at Lakeland Elementary School. And
very important skill. I'm also interested, Regina, as you perfect the skill of instructional leadership and being an instructional leader and giving bite-sized feedback to the teachers, as you feel like you're developing in that skill set and improving, what did you notice in your teachers? Did you notice that there was a positive response from them? Did you get feedback? What encouraged you to say, I'm improving?
Yes, great question. The way that I measure that is from year to year. We have our collective bargaining agreement that has some pretty direct lines about what teachers may do and must do. And one of the may do's is sitting down with their admin team and having conversations with them about their practice. So it doesn't say you have to do that in person. And when I first started this out, I had a lot of teachers that would do that through a very formal process through the computer, which we have a system in order to be able to respond back and forth about the practice. And I will say that after I started doing just small things like after an observation, leaving just a positive note about what I saw taking place within the classroom, that was great. And then just saying, hey, when you have a few minutes, if you could stop by, or I can stop by so we can just chat about some of the great things that I saw within your classroom, just a couple questions that I have. So just making sure that they understood the personal piece in it, and that I left that immediate feedback. And then teachers really started to understand that, hey, this is not that scary, it's not that intimidating. When we sit down and have those conversations, I really am getting something that is beneficial to me in my practice. And then the next day or two, I'm able to go in the classroom and see what we talked about actually happening inside of that classroom. And so that's how I gauge that, more teachers are willing to have face-to-face conversations with me regarding their instructional practice, and then I'm actually seeing it take place within the classroom. And ultimately, when data is rolling in, I'm seeing that the scholars are improving academically in the specific areas of reading.
Very good. Yeah, it sounded like you pulled upon the qualitative data or the quantitative data to gauge your practice, and then supplemented that with quantitative data through your meetings and discussions with the teachers. That's great. So next we would like to add Allison to the discussion. Allison has had great efforts at Curie Metro, and we would love to hear from you about examples when you caught upon elements of your training in leading your school.
Thank you, Marcy. So I got into the principal preparation program at University of Illinois Chicago, UIC, as a teacher leader. And it was, I'm sure as many of us were, I was a teacher who had taken on a number of leadership roles within the school and began to realize I was thinking more and more comprehensively about students' educational experiences, and that administration would be a track that would allow me to do that full time. And UIC's program provides that opportunity for educators in Chicago. And what's really neat, and I believe has really supported my success as a principal, is that they have sort of a three-layered approach to principal preparation, with the theoretical that comes through our academic classes as doctoral students, the practical that comes through a residency experience where we are a resident administrator but not yet in charge of our own school. And then there's sort of this meta reflective layer of preparation through a designated coach who provides us with reflective and consultation type of experiences. And so for me, transitioning from teacher leader to a resident administrator to then principal of Curie Metro High School was a huge challenge. So Curie, as you mentioned before, is a very large school with over 270 staff members. And at the time I came into leadership at Curie, it was also in a very vulnerable place. Trust was very low across all stakeholders. That could be measured in a number of ways through surveys, but also through your qualitative experiences. And the student culture and climate was at an all-time low. The year before my administration arrived, there had been 105 arrests in the building, 113 fights. So I was coming in not having previously worked in this very large environment. I was also coming in without any prior administrative experience beyond my principal preparation program, and challenged to take over this school and put it on a path to success. And so I think, a very tangible example of how the program supported that is because UIC integrates the theory and the practice so well. As a student and a resident administrator, we had read research and practice entry planning, right? So what does a 30, 60, 90-day plan look like to come into a new organization, build trust, establish confidence in your leadership, establish expertise, and most importantly, understanding the organizations, its gaps and its potentials, and how you leverage them. And so because I had done sort of some practice rounds, and in the process of my actual entry planning for Curie, had the support of my coach, had the support of a cohort of colleagues who are transitioning themselves into new organizations, and this theoretical foundation, I was able to effectively build a transition plan that allowed me to come in and gain the trust of the community. I came in as an interim, and in Chicago, we have kind of local governance. And so later that first year, I was awarded a 4-year contract through them, transitioning from the interim, as well as get the student culture and climate on the right track. We went from, as I mentioned, 105 arrests to 18 arrests, 113 fights in 1 year to 25, and get the confidence of the school community and get the school on track. Again, not having worked as an administrator before, and I do attribute it all to the really stellar preparation I had from UIC.
It's quite an impressive story. So I'm really interested too, Allison, in your description of your career trajectory as you went up the pipeline, and then talking about the jump from a teacher leader to becoming principal. And as much effort is put into trying to smooth that and make that as logical and make that flow as easy as possible, that they're all, you described being jarred a little bit, and would like to, what could have eased that for you possibly?
Well, I actually think, the program helped me very well, and one of the reasons why is in between that teacher leader and that principal positions, I had the residency experience. And so theoretically, I felt very prepared for the job. I do think, one of the biggest gaps, and unfortunately, I don't yet feel equipped to offer solutions on it, but is the politics that we have to navigate as school leaders. They're internal and external. As a teacher leader, you might get a lot of experience thinking critically about instruction, coaching, leading teams of adults, designing adult learning. I had done all that and felt confident in my abilities to do all that. But to do all that and navigate the complexities of the political environment in and around the school, and the number of stakeholders that sort of demand and necessitate your attention, that part was very new to me, and something that I kind of felt like I was learning as I went along. So, of course, you're navigating inside the building, who's buying in, who's not buying in. We're all dealing with constraints on resources. We're given a set budget, a set of resources that we can allocate, and we have a whole bunch of stakeholders who want to do the best they can to educate our students, but also the external politics, right? So our local neighborhood alderman has an investment in the school. The neighborhood civic association has an investment in the school. The local businesses that are adjacent to our property have a stake in the school. And so also, those were the types of experiences that were new to me, and that you kind of very quickly have to learn how to balance and compromise with people who feel invested in the education of students and want what's best for the community, but don't necessarily have a background in education.
Right. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. So to shift gears just slightly, and bring a new dimension into the conversation, would like to ask you all about one of the reoccurring themes that we here at UCEA often hear when having discussions with principals, and that is a really strong need to leverage your network of support. And this is true not only in times of disruption and chaos within a school, but also in times of relative calm. So I was hoping you all might be able to speak a bit about how your preparation program offered you a network of support that you continue to tap into, how it has connected you to peers and mentors that you utilize. Kaeleen, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcy. And this is actually a topic that is near and dear to my heart. As a counselor and clinician, I was taught more it was drilled into us that self-care is of the utmost importance. And I truly believe it is even more of a necessity as a principal. And a large part of self-care is leveraging and engaging a strong network of support. Luckily, DU put as strong of an emphasis on support and peer feedback in building that network early on in the program. At the start of every class, we took about 30 minutes to sit in small student groups and participate in open frames. It was unstructured time where we were able to share concerns, problems of practice, or just express the stress we were feeling as educators. There was really no agenda, no expectations, no judgment or shame. And as Allison mentioned, understanding the political systems of schools is and can be really difficult. And this simple practice helped us share things that came up unexpectedly. It was simple, but a powerful practice, and ultimately became one of the parts of my coursework that I look forward to each class and ended up valuing the most. Still to this day, I regularly reach out and connect with my previous classmates to ask questions, ideate, solicit advice, or just normalize a situation or feeling I'm having. What was interesting through my program is my colleagues, my boss, even my students began to see a change in the way I behaved after just a few short weeks in my coursework. Really, just by knowing that I was not alone in the work I was doing and that I always had someone to reach out to made me feel this sense of calm while also being more confident. Truly, I think I could work to learn as much as I can about adaptive leadership or systems thinking, action science, change theory, and organizational learning. But I thoroughly believe nothing will replace the power that comes from leveraging the knowledge of a strong network and professional community. Again, what was really interesting is after a few months in my program and a noticeable transformation in my approach to my work, I had two teachers and our social worker come up to me and ask what I was doing different. After sharing my experiences and really attributing my change to my principal prep program, they too decided they wanted to sign up for DU's program, and we intentionally then created a new professional learning community within our school focused on promoting aspiring leaders. We made it a point to meet once a month, and we always started with an open frame. Because my colleagues were going through the program a few years behind me, they were able to remind me about aspects of my training that I would have otherwise forgot. And I was able to give them insights into what I had learned through my program and share the mistakes that I had made. What was even more interesting from this peer mentoring program was that DU's faculty continued to engage our school and provide tangible advice and resources as our school changed and grew. It was this sense of community and the wraparound support structures that I strongly believe were the most powerful levers in improving our productivity as a new leadership team and helping us weather not only the best of times, but those times of stress.
Absolutely. And how wonderful to hear that even your colleagues within your school noticed a difference in your behavior.
It was pretty powerful for me to be having students come up and saying, Ms. K, you seem so much happier in your work. You seem lighter. And that was really a powerful moment in my career.
Right, right. That's wonderful. Regina, do you have a similar experience or thoughts to share?
Yes, anybody that knows me knows that I live by the word of balance, and going into the role of school administration and leadership, I knew that it was going to take a lot of time, energy, and effort on my part to be the type of leader that I had envisioned. But with that, I knew that I wanted to make sure that I didn't just let myself go on a personal, emotional, and spiritual level. And so that's something that I hold true to my heart on a day-to-day basis, is just making sure, what can I do to be my very best when I'm here at school? And when I'm not at school, how can I ensure that I'm being my very best in that space? And so that's one thing that I really appreciated about my program through the Danforth program at the University of Washington, is that they researching the program and being in the program, really believed in that word balance. And that really came about at the beginning of the program. They send you off to a retreat, and we went to Islandwood on a ferry ride, and through that trip we really got to know ourselves as individuals, and it was just a really great experience where you really got to investigate yourself, what type of leader you currently are, what type of leader do you want to be, and what would that look like in order to get there. And we really unpacked the words, core values. What does that mean? What does that look like? And in this work, it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very messy. And how can you always stay true to your core values? And so with that core value work and with the understanding that there's that need of balance, that's really how I think I'm able to get through my job, ensuring that I am doing what I need to do to make sure that the scholars are being successful. Another thing that I really appreciated about the program is they have this cohort model. So everybody that enters the program completes the program together. And it's a very, very small program. My cohort was 22 students. And so we really got to know each other on a personal level and on a work level. And so that was very, very important. The program offers you a critical friend. And so everybody within that program really got to know at least one individual really, really well. And so if we had any type of questions or concerns or needed to talk anything through, we had at least one person that we knew we could contact at any time to really work through that. And one thing that we always did once a week is talked about a problem of practice. So we were able to bring what is a real life problem that you are grappling with within your practice, in your environment, and you bring that to the program and you kind of talk that out. What would you do if you were, in my shoes? What would that look like? What would that sound like? And so that I really appreciated that. And I still reach out to my critical friend to this day. I actually had a conversation with him last week regarding something that I'm grappling with right now. And so the friendships that I established within that program, I still have today. And that goes all the way to the director. I still I'm in contact with the director of the program to this day. And in order, the job that I have right now, I actually reached out to her and she was able to help me go over the pros and the cons and about this work. And is this something that is aligned to my core values? So that's something that I definitely appreciated.
Absolutely. That's outstanding. That's outstanding. So it sounded like you really trusted and had, established relationships with your peers, where you could be candid and vulnerable and feel comfortable sharing concerns.
Yes, I think that's the only way we can get through this work, because there's no, my program was great, but no program can teach you everything, right? And so you have to have that support network around you in order to continue to grow and bounce ideas off of one another, because things just happen on a day-to-day basis, a very fast-paced field, and you just need someone to just say, hey, am I thinking about this the right way? Am I missing anything? It's just a really powerful thing when you have that support.
Absolutely. Allison, would you like to chime in here and talk about the network of support that you've encountered?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate that that's, I think, intentionally part of the program that UIC offers its principals as it prepares them and as they enter into their new organizations. It's invaluable, as we all know, and I'm sure many of us listening understand it. It's lonely at the top, right? And as we're in some of our early stages of strategic planning, or when we're faced with an unexpected conflict or an issue arises, there are some things that, at times even we need a thought partner before we can go to our assistant principals. That we want to come to them feeling planned, feeling prepared. We want to see the issue, 360 degrees of perspective. And sometimes we need that thought partner to come from outside of our building, I really believe. And so through UIC's principal preparation program, they connect us with a cohort of colleagues who are being prepared and transitioning sort of into new roles at the same time. And they have been those thought partners for me largely, to this day, when I'm confronted with something, new and novel, which is almost every day, but new and novel, and I'm trying to weigh the best possible solutions, I'm on the phone with some of those colleagues from my cohort. Additionally, I previously mentioned the coaching. My assigned coach is an experienced principal from Chicago Public Schools, and so has her own network of colleagues, as well as a network of coachees, students or principals that she has coached in years ahead of me or years behind me. And that was very valuable in my first year as a principal, as I was thinking, okay, I want to develop a really robust professional development strand for my department chairs. Or our instructional powerful practice is Webb's depth of knowledge and increasing rigor. I could reach out to my coach and say, do you know anyone else who's done this or has worked on this? And I could immediately be connected with, oh yes, you should talk to, Principal Jones at Smith High School. They just tried this last year. And we would arrange for a meeting, and I was able then to learn from the experiences of other principals, what went well for them, what didn't work for them. And, I'm sure it helped me avoid many pitfalls I might have otherwise found myself falling into.
Absolutely. So it sounded like it was tailored support too to other people that were experiencing very similar challenges and situations.
Yeah, the support of the coach allows for that.
Terrific. So the next question I would like to address, and this is for the benefit of the UCEA audience, for consisting of ed leadership faculty and graduate students, is just pretty broad about what attracted you to your program. We can tell, and just from hearing all the stories and everything you're describing, just the level of commitment and effort it takes to go through this type of training and how extensive it is. So what made you want to advance your career in this way? And what was it about both advance your career in this way, go through this program, and what inspired you to pursue school leadership generally? Kaeleen, do you have any thoughts?
Absolutely. Initially, for me, it was the fear of not having a job the next year and that intense feeling that I had to take action. The fear that the students I loved working with, were not going to have continuity in their education if our school closed. And honestly, it was the major gaps that I saw in our education system as a whole, and the belief that if I could just learn more, if I could just work harder and find really smart people that were willing and already doing great work and were willing to share their ideas and knowledge, I could help a few more students have a better education, an education they could be proud of, and an education that all students deserve. When I started to research programs, I knew it was going to be difficult to balance a full counseling caseload in a turnaround school and a principal preparation program, not to mention try to have a personal life. I knew I needed a program that would really be tangible, a program that would provide relevancy and allow me to use my school and my network and my existing experiences while providing insights into how to improve and improve quickly. As Regina mentioned, it's the process of learning about yourself and your core values that I really wanted as well in a program. I wanted a program that would help me to become an authentic school leader. From the first moment I met the DU faculty, I knew this program was not going to be the traditional stand and deliver instruction I had become so accustomed to in my other coursework. Every single class, it was the contributions of my fellow students within the cohorts and this really rich dialogue that pushed my learning. Really, it was the project-based model that attracted me to DU's program. Essentially, it was the promise that I'd be able to deeply study my school for an entire year. And it ultimately became the first time in my academic career that I was not tasked to regurgitate information. Rather, it gave me the power to wield my pen for change in a system I was already deeply, deeply invested in.
Interesting. So I was captivated by the term that you use, authentic school leader. And I was kind of interested in like what that means to you.
Absolutely. For me, similar to what Regina said, is it's the part of knowing thyself. Who am I? What do I bring to the table? And what gaps in my personality or in my knowledge base am I aware of? And how do I leverage the systems and the people that I surround myself with to intentionally close gaps to improve our students' experience? And so a lot of that is the work that doesn't necessarily come from a book, but the conversations that you have with other school leaders that have really evolved their thinking, evolved who they are, and put in the time to ask themselves some difficult questions, uncovering their bias, uncovering what assumptions they come into school leadership with. And sometimes those conversations are difficult, but they're really important if we really want to be change agents for our students.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Regina, do you have any thoughts about what motivated you toward your prep program and school leadership?
Definitely. I will say that I'm one to really think about all of my decisions, all of the pros and the cons before moving forward with something. And so this is kind of a living joke that it took me a little over 2 years to decide what program I wanted to join and to really decide I wanted to do this work. And so the director of the program had seen me at several informational sessions just to get some insight about what this program was going to offer. And so at these sessions, I gained a clear understanding of what this program was going to offer, and I was able to ask questions. And so, after a few info sessions, the director, pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, I've seen your face a few times. Is there anything else that I can answer for you?" And so her and I had a in-depth conversation about what is equity going to look like and sound like within this program, especially as a younger Black African-American female that wants to really be a change agent for all students, especially students that have traditionally been marginalized by the educational system and society as a whole. So we were able to have that discussion, and through the information that she was able to share with me, I just learned that she was a very down-to-earth person that would really be able to just strengthen my skill set about what that was going to look like and sound like in order to be an equity-driven leader. And so that helped me make my decision that Danforth was the right program for me. And then I was able to apply and get in. And so I know that the program goes through a very strict protocol in order to screen and accept their candidates to the program. And again, the program that the cohort that I was a part of was only 22 students. And so I just knew that whoever was going to be in there, that they were really handpicked, and that it was going to be a powerful group of people to really sit down and kind of grapple with different ideas in order to really make sure that when we get into this field of school leadership, that we were the best prepared as possible. Right. Another thing that really drove me to this program was that it was a 1 year, very intense program where you did your coursework and your internship at the same time. And so on a day-to-day basis, I was in the school really working at what does leadership look like and sound like, and how. And then I'm able to go to school that evening or that Saturday and to really talk about the theory and the research and the literature. And so I think doing that at the same time was very, very beneficial, because it's just allowing you to do things in real life and in real time. Right. And so that was very, very important. And it was just all in all, I'm a very people person. Family is very important to me. And when I was at those information sessions and throughout the program, that's one thing that we prided ourselves on, is just being a little mini family. And again, we still reach out and talk to each other to this day and time. And we're a few years removed.
Yeah, going back to the discussion of core values, it kind of sounds like by asking those questions and bringing up those themes that resonated deeply with you, that formed that connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Allison, what about your thoughts and perspectives on what attracted you to your preparation program and just generally school leadership?
Sure, thanks for asking. And I think, like Regina, there definitely the attention to or concern about equity and equity in schools was part of my consideration. In Chicago, there's a lot of options, and I do believe that UIC is the most committed to supporting educators who want to go into Chicago public schools and want to think about equity for our children of color or our children who have families living below the poverty line. And I knew that in part because I had obtained my master's degree from UIC. Also, I had served as an adjunct professor there. So the other sort of pull to the UIC program for me, though, was that marriage of theory and practice. I liked that UIC was offering a doctoral degree as well as a certification, and they had a reputation for really blending the theory and practice in a way that was conducive to supporting the actual work. The assignments that were given in the academic graduate level classes were assignments that were based on our real lived daily experiences as school administrators. And so it was really just the philosophy of the program, knowing they were committed to Chicago public schools, and that's where I was coming from and where I wanted to serve. And also their commitment to providing an educational experience that was practical as well as theoretical, and a marriage of those two things.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. It definitely sounds like there are some key themes across all three of you, and what you're looking for and what attracted you. So we wanted to take a moment and remind everyone to please enter any questions you have into the question box. We have some coming in that are really good, and we'd like to get to in the remaining time that we have left. The first one comes from a representative of a UCEA improvement community that's focused on helping members ensure that students in preparation programs are engaged in consistently high quality, powerful learning experiences, which they describe as experiences that are meaningful and transformative. So they're wondering if in the course of your preparation programs, did you experience what you would consider to be a powerful learning experience? What stands out to you with that when you say those words, a powerful learning experience? And if you did, what were they, and why were they powerful? What made them powerful, and how did they impact your current practice? Anyone want to take off or lead from there?
I can go ahead and start.
Helin?
Yes, I think my answer is hands down. My principal preparation program was inspiring and changed the course of my life. If you would have asked me when I started my principal prep program, really even further back during my master's program for school counseling, if I would ever get a PhD in education, I think I probably would have laughed, but just going through my principal prep program, it almost pulled off the blinders and exposed me to different aspects of the field of education that I previously had never been aware of. And through the year in my training program and having such an incredible principal mentor, I was inspired to keep going. And that's ultimately what led me into my PhD program, and wanting to give back to other aspiring principals the gift I was given of how can you be really impactful change agent for students, and how can you be a transformative leader? So I truly believe without my program, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't have been able to open a school and support the 300 students that I was able to serve in my community.
Right. Very good. Regina, Allison, any thoughts?
Yeah, what comes to mind is just the program within itself was just very powerful. Again, that equity focus was very transparent from the beginning to the end. And before, I considered myself an equity-driven team, dean, assistant principal, and I wanted to continue that work as a principal. But going through that program, I really got to really deconstruct what equity means, because I think that is a term that's thrown around in the world, and especially the field of education, very loosely. And so I was able to really uncover what does that mean to me, and how do I lead on a day-to-day basis as through that lens. When I'm looking at data, when I'm going to the classrooms, when I'm having conversations with families, just my day-to-day life. And so that was just very, very important and a very impactful experience. Is just really unpacking that and really tying that to my core values. And so I'm just very appreciative to the program to just allow you to have that time to really reflect and uncover, because as we all know, the field is very, very busy, and a lot of times we don't have that time to just unpack things and to do that really deep reflection in order to become better. So that is just something that I hold true and dear to myself, is just being that equity-driven leader and really always having at heart the students that traditionally don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it was very powerful to you to be able to have that time and the reflection of not just using equity as a throwaway term or a, easy offering, but really diving into what it means and how you can promote it. Implementation aspect. Yeah. Great. So, Allison, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about powerful learning experiences.
Yeah, thanks. Of course, the residency experience I've mentioned before, the 1-year opportunity to serve as an administrator, but really also sort of just be a learner at the same time, allowed me that space to grow my mindset, to gain new perspectives. To get more specific, though, an example of that sort of theory and practice marriage I acknowledged earlier. There's one class, there are several classes that UIC offers, but one in particular I'm thinking of, and it was taught by Dr. Shelby Kosner, who has given the students at UIC a lot of knowledge and skills around continuous improvement and using cycles of inquiry. And also, again, the assignments in that course were so well attached to our practical experiences. So we were asked to take some theory, some readings we had done, specifically City and colleagues who had written about effective teams. So much of the work we do as principals involves meeting with teams of adults and trying to build the capacity of adults to take on projects, take on initiatives, and improve student outcomes. And so we had used the theory to do an assessment of a team within our school and kind of measure, do they have some of these characteristics, root cause analysis of why they may not be, maximizing their effectiveness, and then plan for how we might develop that team to be more effective, to have a bigger impact on student outcomes. And that experience, that assignment, is something I do with almost all of the teams I work with now, on my own on the back end, as I'm thinking about how do I want to work with this team? What supports do I want to provide this team? What does the team leader need to be doing differently, or what resources do I need to bring in? I use sort of that same model as looking at the research and some of the framework that's been provided in the research, and then measuring, doing an analysis or an assessment of what that team is demonstrating and what they're not demonstrating and what we should do next.
That sounds great. And it actually leads directly into the next question we received from the audience, from an educational researcher that's looking at time spent in the day by principals. And he's curious to know, how much time do you spend in meetings, just generally on a typical day, and how helpful, hopefully they're helpful, are these meetings in fulfilling your role as a principal? And just considering the amount of time that the research is showing that principals spend in meetings, how did your preparation program help you prepare to lead successful meetings? Kaeleen? Yeah.
I think I was told early on, and I think just having such a great relationship with my mentor principal in my prep program, I was well aware that being a principal was difficult and that you get pulled in a tremendous amount of directions and you are called to a lot of different meetings. And I think for me it was taking pause and asking what my place was within those meetings before just accepting the invite, and what was my role, what would I be able to offer, was there somebody within the team that I was helping to lead that would be better suited to answer the questions or provide the skills necessary to get the answers that were being asked. And I think part of that is, we mentioned earlier on that we were trained to be leaders, not managers. And managers will accept meetings and follow their calendar and show up to meetings and do their best to be very transactional in their day-to-day. Leaders take the time to pause and reflect and also see the capacity that's available in their team. And so I really tried to do that. I'll be honest, it was difficult. I would say throughout the week, 3/4 of my week was scheduled meetings that I had to be at. And so I think with that comes a lot of organization, and I utilize things like the Pomodoro technique. I was always going to my open frames, asking the questions: what are other principals doing? How do you leverage your team? What is helping you stay organized? And I think it was coming to the table, being willing to always learn and listen from other individuals who've been doing the work for a long time and are really successful at it, that helped me throughout my day.
Very good. We are coming close. We have a couple other questions, a few remaining minutes. But Regina and Allison, any thoughts that you all have on how to balance and make meetings productive?
Just a practical thing in order to balance. One thing that, again, we've all talked about is just being that instructional leader, right, and not just a manager. And so what I try to do is just really just calendar all of my contractual observations, but then those informal ones that are very important as well, just count them out on my calendar. So I know, like, this is something that can't be interrupted because I hold that as it's valuable, and it's important just as the meetings are. And so really trying to find that balance between being a part of meetings and leading meetings, but also doing that work of being present within the building and especially in the classroom. So that is an important piece.
Sure. Allison?
Yeah, I would estimate I probably spend, I'm looking at a glance at my calendar, maybe 50% of my time in meetings. There are a lot of, also maybe especially in a school this size, a lot of things we do are in team settings. I love protocols. I think as educators, so much of the data that we use in our work is observational or qualitative. And, especially most of the teachers haven't had a theoretical level of, graduate training and instructional leadership. Sometimes the meetings can be prolonged because we're spending a lot of time sharing our observational data rather than trying to think concisely about what those the implications of that data. So I love protocols. The book Meeting Wise is very helpful. There's a number of protocol websites to try to help keep the conversation focused and to help everybody at the table hone in on kind of what's the goal and what are we trying to pull out of our shared experiences.
Right. Yeah, protocols are key. So another quick question that we've received, and this is directed toward you, Kaeleen. And when you began your remarks where you referenced your organizational diagnosis tool, that it sounds very impressive and very helpful and transformational. And is that something that is publicly available that can be shared?
Yeah, I can actually pull up. So we utilize something called Portfolio, and it can be made available to the general public. I am actually looking at mine now, and it is available to the general public. So if you were to Google search my name and DU Portfolio, it's part 1, and it's labeled Organizational Diagnosis. I'll warn you now, as I mentioned, it was a pretty hefty project, so it's over almost 150 pages of information that I looked at and analyzed, but please feel free to open it up, take a look at it, and reach out to me with any questions. My information is also on DU's portfolio page.
Fantastic. That is wonderful. Well, apologies. We do have questions that we are not going to be able to get to, and they are good. Webinar part 2, possibly, but we don't want to keep everyone past the allotted time. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Kaeleen Barnett, Allison Tingwall, and Regina Connerly for joining us today and sharing your important perspectives. Thank each of you. We really appreciate it. And I'd also like to thank all of the attendees that joined us today and asked great questions to extend our thinking on high quality preparation. And I'd also like to remind everyone to tell your colleagues if they were not able to attend today, or you'd just like to listen to it again, that we will have a full recording posted on the UCEA website and available for opportunities to listen back. So we encourage you to share it. So we just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye for now, and have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.